Welcome to In Your Defense, Galveston and Beyond.
Hello and welcome to Defense on the Coast with Mark Diaz, a passionate criminal defense attorney with over 25 years of experience defending the rights of Texans. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and I'm excited to discuss all things criminal defense law today with Mark. Mark, great to see you again.
Good to see you again.
So today we're going to talk about jury selection and how important it is to winning a criminal case. So can you explain, can you kind of go over the selection process and why it's so important to a criminal trial?
Well, so the process is, and I'm going to speak as if we're talking about felonies because that's where the stakes are higher. So on a felony jury, we typically bring in 60 to 65 panel members that we then voir dire. The judge usually asks some preliminary questions to try and weed out people that might not be a good fit. Then the state gets to ask questions and then the defense. And what we're trying to do is get down to usually 12 jurors and one alternate. And so it's difficult because people, you got a room of 65 people that don't know each other and they're not real comfortable talking about any subject in front of a crowd, right? They're not used to it. They're not like us who do it all the time.
And on top of that, a lot of them don't want to be there. They're missing work, they're missing stuff. So yeah, that can't help either.
Speaking to that, I once tried a case or was doing jury selection in another county, and the judge started his time by saying, "Thank you to all of you who didn't Google how to get out of jury service."
Nice.
But yes, and so it's my job to get these people to talk, right? Because I can't figure out what type of juror may be good or not good for a case without engaging the jurors to talk. And so that's one of the biggest challenges, is trying to find out what people's beliefs are, because every case is different. So I have, depending upon the type of case, there's different things I want to know from these panel members. And so I have to engage them. I've seen lawyers just stand up and ask scripted questions without engaging. And in my opinion, that's the wrong way to do it. But that's the most important part, is trying to weed out the people that are not going to be good jurors or fair jurors or, have some bias that may affect your case. That's all of it right there. That's the big start.
And what are some of the key factors that you'll look at during jury selection that could influence your decision on who you want and also, or don't want, maybe more importantly, and also that might influence the outcome of a case more?
Right. It's different for every case, because let's say it's a case involving cruelty to animals. Well, I want to make sure I don't get any animal lovers, right, on the jury. Let's say it could be, if my client is of a particular race, maybe I want to get as many people of the same race on the jury, or maybe I don't want people of his or her race on the jury for a particular reason. It's never the same strategy, right? It always changes depending upon the facts that I'm dealing with, the person sitting next to me. Just, there's so many factors. An easy one is when I represent a client who doesn't speak English, they'll be sitting next to me with a pair of headphones on and a translator sitting off in the corner translating so that he or she can understand what's going on during the trial. People aren't just going to say, "I'm not comfortable that he doesn't speak English," right? People aren't going to say, "Does the fact that he speaks English means he's in the country legally or illegally?" So you have to try and find artful ways to get this out of people to determine whether or not you think they'll be a good juror for your case.
It's like you got to be part psychologist.
Yes.
Yeah.
There have been many times, I have 3 associates that work for me. There have been many times that I have let them lead jury selection because I've been studying people, right, for the past 27 years now. And so I know I'm looking for certain looks on people's faces. I want to see how this guy reacts to this question, because the nonverbal clues can tell you a lot too, right?
Absolutely.
And so I spend a lot of time just making eye contact and looking and seeing what I can observe.
Yeah, for sure. So the jury questioning process has a term. Is it voir dire? Did I get that right? Voir dire?
So technically it's voir dire from the
voir
French,
dire.
But here in Texas, we all say voir dire.
Voir dire?
Yeah. as much as I can, I try and avoid the issue and just call it jury selection because, we don't speak French. For those that do, to have me up there bastardizing the word and calling it voir dire is offensive. So I refer to it as jury selection.
I agree. I avoid words that I can't pronounce well. It's a good rule of thumb. All right. So what role does your ability to assess their biases and experiences play in selecting a favorable jury? Because obviously you try as best you can, but how does finding their biases and maybe their life experiences affect how things might play out with them on the jury?
So first they filled out a little information card, right? Which tells me what they do for a living. Are they married, not married? Very basic information. And so depending upon the case, I may want or not want older people. I may want to focus solely on younger people, depending upon my issue. A lot of times, in a lot of cases that don't have a lot of science and a lot of technical aspects, we typically wouldn't like, let's say, an engineer. If I have a case involving injuries of some sort, I may or may not want someone in the medical field, right? If I think that the medical facts are on my side, then maybe I would like someone in the medical field. If not, then I don't. And I say medical field because here in Galveston, we have UTMB, which is probably the largest employer in the area. And UTMB is the University of Texas Medical Branch. So again, depending upon the case, we look at all that. Maybe if my client is accused of victimizing a female, then maybe I don't want females as much as I can, right? I want more men. So we just look at all that. What do they do for a living? What do I think people like that may think about this issue? I mean, it's a big part of the process.
When you're creating a narrative or a theme around your case as a defense attorney, do you have to change your approach after jury selection? Based on who's there, based on who ends up being on the jury, does your narrative change?
So not really, because, during jury selection, we're not allowed to get into the facts of the case that we're here on, right? I can create a hypothetical that, at least in my mind, is similar enough to try and get some information from people, but they don't really get the theme of my case until opening statements, which is after jury selection. Mm-hmm. And typically the way we do it here, jury selection is on day one and we don't start trial until the next day. So a lot of times my opening statement, says something to the effect of, now you get to hear about this case that you're here on, right? Because the day before they spent all day listening to answering questions, listening to both sides, the judge, all that, but they have no idea what's really going on in this case, right? So they don't really get my theme, voir dire. Now, our jury selection, the way that they may understand my theme is once I give my opening statement, then they say, oh, that's why he asked this question during voir dire, right? Then they start to put it together. But on day one during jury selection, they don't know it.
The demographic makeup of a jury is obviously going to influence the outcome of a criminal case, or can influence the outcome of a criminal case. So do you factor in any other aspects of the jury's makeup into your strategy?
Yes. Again, like I said before, if my victim is a child, let's say, right? If it's a crime involving a child victim, I probably don't want a jury packed with a lot of people with young children. In that case, I probably want younger people that don't have children and older people that have grown children, right? Ideally, I don't want people on my panel with children or grandchildren in the same age group as the case that I'm dealing with, right?
Makes sense.
Race can be a factor, but it's tricky because depending upon the case, I have found that some people can be harder on their own people because they take the attitude of, you're making us look bad, right?
Interesting.
Right. So it's tricky and it changes with every case and every set of facts.
How much of an impact does the jury, I mean, this is going to sound like a silly question because obviously the jury has a large impact on a criminal case, but once the trial has started, that jury's temperament, their makeup, does that change the course of the case significantly?
No, because I can't, once I've decided on the path that I'm going to take on defense, I can't really change it for one or two people, right, on the jury.
Yeah.
What it may make me do is when I'm arguing either opening, closing, it may make me have eye contact with this juror, and I want to make sure I make contact with that juror, but I'm not going to look at juror number 5. You know what I mean? It can kind of impact that, but I can't really adjust the whole defense because now I don't like someone on the jury.
So I have never had jury duty as of yet. So I'm going to ask a question because I don't know how this works. But so if you are interviewing a juror and you say, I don't want this person, are they if either attorney objects, are they gone, or do both attorneys have to object?
So any juror, there is no limit on the number of strikes for cause. So meaning it's obvious this juror can't be fair. I'll give you an easy one. A lot of people fall out on the defendant's right to remain silent, meaning the defendant has the right not to testify, right? So when we ask, does anyone have a problem if the defendant doesn't testify? Sometimes a lot of people will raise their hand and say, yes, I can't, if I can't hear from him, I can't be fair, right? That person can automatically be excluded because they've indicated they can't be fair. Another easy one is the range of punishment. So let's say it's a first-degree felony and the minimum is 5 years, maximum 99 years or life. And we always ask, can you consider the minimum or the maximum given any set of facts you can imagine, right? And one that has happened to me is, like, especially on drug cases, people have raised their hand and say, I can't consider the range of punishment for drugs. Like, I think we should be helping people rather than putting them in prison for drugs. And so they're like, no, I can't consider that range of punishment. That would exclude them for cause. Now, once we've gone through, the process is, as we're going, right, I'm keeping a list of who I think is for cause. The judge is making a list and the state. So then after we're done, we meet and we discuss who we agree on that is stricken for cause. You'd be surprised that a lot of the time we all have the same list, right?
Really?
Because we've been doing it for so long. I know who's gone for cause and who's not. The judge does this, state, but in the event there was someone we don't agree, like someone I want off for cause, but the state says, I don't think you got him. We get to call that person up outside of the presence of the rest of the people and individually ask questions to determine whether or not they should be stricken for cause. And then the judge either grants it or denies it. Okay, then each side gets 10 strikes for basically any reason you want. I could say, I don't know, juror number 3 is wearing a green shirt and I hate green, and he's gone. The only reason you can't strike someone is if it was because of race.
Of course, yeah.
The funny thing that this does do is, so you've lost, pick any number you want. Let's say 10 for cause, right? Then I've got 10 and they've got 10. So it means that I have to also be conscious of where's the jury picking stop, right? Because I've got 65 people in the room, but we didn't lose that many for cause. So I don't need to be worried about jurors number 50. And I'd be wasting a strike, right? Mm-hmm. So we always figure out where would be the stopping point. So if the stopping point is 36, I know that I have to concentrate my 10 in the first 36. So
okay, wow, it's interesting. I don't know if I've ever had that explained to me. Thank you for that. Do you have an example of a case where maybe the jury selection really played a pivotal role in how it worked out?
I don't know how to answer that, right? So obviously I'd like to say, sure, every time I've gotten a not guilty, it was because of jury selections, right? I've had, I don't know, that's hard to answer, right? Mm-hmm. In some ways you could say every case, right?
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah.
Whether you like the result or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say if I had gotten a better jury, but it's really difficult, especially if you can't get people to talk during jury selection. What happens is if you're not paying real good attention and making sure you're engaging enough people, by the time jury selection comes, you're like, oh man, juror number 17 never said anything. What do I do?
No idea what this guy's thinking.
So then I turn to, well, what does he do for a living? What city does he live in? I try to make the decision some other way, but if you can't get them to talk, it's a lot of those end up on the jury. because neither side remembers, oh man, I don't know about juror number 20, right? So juror number 20 ends up on the jury, and neither side really has anything about him because he didn't engage.
Yeah, you almost just kind of forget about the people that don't leave a mark or don't remember. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
That's interesting.
I mean, we obviously, every jury selection, there's at least one guy who, you know, he's very opinionated and he's going to let you know it. And it's almost to the point where, like, at some point you wish you could say, listen, you're not going to be on this jury. Can you stop talking?
We're not going to pick you, so please stop wasting our time.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on Defense on the Coast with Texas criminal defense attorney Mark Diaz. To connect with Mark, you can visit texascriminaljustice.com, and please like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Mark, always good to see you. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for the education on how the jury selection works.
Good to see you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.